big one tonight. There's a prestigious government program called the White House Fellowship, founded by President Lyndon Johnson in 1964. And every year, a group of talented young people get to become White House Fellows. They're given an amazing opportunity to work in top offices in the federal government with senior White House staff or cabinet secretaries, for example. And fellows are then expected to apply what they learn serving the nation as leaders in public service or in their communities for future professions. Strictly Nonpartisans produced an impressive list of alumni who've gone on to reach the highest levels of the government, military, business, like retired four-star General Wesley Clark, former Secretary of State Colin Powell, Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, heavy hitters. And so, of course, the ones who choose the White House Fellows are themselves top-notch people. Members of the President's Commission have included former Senator Tom Daschle, Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe. Tom Brokaw was a commissioner. And this week, President Trump has chosen two new members to join that elite commission. These guys. Yeah, I'm serious. The return to the White House whack pack is thing two in 60 seconds. One of the biggest stories of the first 3 years of the Trump administration has been the fast and frequent departure of White House employees. But now that we're in year 4, all the characters from season 1 are coming back. This week, we learned that Sean Spicer, who left his utterly humiliating tenure as press secretary to go dancing with the stars, is now being appointed to the President's Commission on White House Fellowships, along with Reince Priebus, the shortest-serving White House chief of staff in American history. That comes as President Trump has found a way to get Hope Hicks back in the building. She's returning as a counselor to the president, but will be working with Jared Kushner on the myriad of projects he oversees, and also the president's reelection campaign, apparently, with public money. I don't know about that. To top it all off, former Trump body man John McEntee is coming back to the West Wing in a new role. You might remember him because he was literally marched out of the building in 2018 after his security clearance was denied, reportedly in part because of an alleged online gambling habit. I guess McEntee will now be leading the Presidential Personnel Office, where he'll be in charge of filling hundreds of top jobs across the federal government. Maybe we can hire back the mooch and we can truly get the gang back together.
But I don't have any friction with Sean. I don't have any friction with Reince. This is the White House, the United States of America. We're serving the president.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.